South Park used to feel like the one show no one could fully claim. Liberals laughed when it mocked conservatives, the right laughed when it mocked the left. And by the end of the episode, everyone usually realized the joke was on them too. That was the magic of South Park. But now, even they admit the obvious.
South Park sucks now? Yeah, everyone knows it. South Park sucks now. And it's because of all this political shit.
To understand why the newer South Park seasons feel different, you have to remember what the show used to be. South Park was never just a cartoon about kids saying bad words. That was part of it, obviously, but the real joke was always the adults. The parents, the teachers, the politicians, the celebrities, the corporations, the media, all of them. South Park was at its best when 4 kids were standing in the middle of complete insanity watching grown adults turn every issue into a circus. That's why people loved it. It didn't feel like a lecture, it didn't feel like a political ad. It felt like the creators were looking at the whole country and saying, you people are all nuts. And they usually had a point. South Park was rude, but it was also honest in a way most TV shows are not, because it didn't give anyone permanent victim status. That was the old deal. You might get to laugh this week, but next week you might be the joke. Some of South Park's most famous moments came from going after the left. In the episode ManBearPig, they turned Al Gore into a desperate attention-seeking activist running around town warning people about a ridiculous monster.
Some people say that ManBearPig isn't real. Well, I'm here to tell you now, ManBearPig is very real.
And the episode worked because it wasn't just making fun of climate change. It was making fun of the smug celebrity politician type who acts like only he can save the world. Years later, South Park brought ManBearPig back and basically walked that joke back.
ManBearPig isn't going to stop!
Oh, is it inconvenient now? I tried to warn you all, but no one took me serious.
Now, depending on where you stand, maybe they were right to revisit it. But from a comedy point of view, it marks something important. The old South Park mocked the sacred cow first and worried about the backlash later. The newer South Park started looking back and saying, maybe we went too far. And once a show like South Park starts apologizing to the same people it used to mock, the edge starts to feel different. 2015 would bring a new character, PC Principal. That was South Park taking a flamethrower to political correctness before a lot of people even understood how bad the culture was going to get. PC Principal wasn't written as some thoughtful civil rights hero. He was sort of a bully, a loud, aggressive, self-righteous tool who used progressive language like a weapon.
So what you're gonna have to do to prove you belong with PC is go out there and check someone's privilege.
And that's what made it funny, because everybody knew the type of person they were mocking. The people who don't just disagree with you, they want to control what you're allowed to say. Then there was Bored Girls, where the show jumped straight into the trans athlete debate. They made the joke as blunt and uncomfortable as possible, because that was South Park's job. You also had the episode Banned in China, and that episode was classic South Park. Hollywood was bending the knee to China, Disney was chasing Chinese money, and American companies were censoring themselves for access to a foreign market. South Park called it out, and as a result, China banned the show. That was the South Park people respected, not because it was always right, but because it still had the guts to go after powerful people and powerful systems. Even the episode joining the Panderverse proved they still had some of that old fire. That Paramount Plus special went after Disney's diversity pandering so hard that
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
became a culture war catchphrase overnight. And that's what makes this whole thing frustrating, because South Park can still do it. The writers still know how to be funny, so when the show starts sounding lazy, one-sided, or repetitive, it stands out even more. But to be fair, South Park was never just attacking liberals. That would have made it boring. The whole reason the show had credibility is because it mocked the right too.
They took our jobs!
They took your job! They took your job!
It mocked conservatives, it mocked religion, it mocked Bush-era politics, and most importantly, it was mocking anyone who took themselves too seriously. In their Iraq War episode, they didn't just make the anti-war side look smart and the pro-war side look dumb, they made both sides look ridiculous. That was South Park's whole worldview. The loudest people are usually the stupidest people, and that applied to everyone. So no, South Park was never supposed to be some right-leaning show. That would probably ruin it. That would just be the right-wing version of the same boring propaganda comedy as seen in late-night TV. The whole point was balance and freedom. South Park used to feel free. It could attack anyone because it didn't seem owned by anyone. And that's why the early Trump material actually worked better than people remember. Here's the part that really matters. South Park had already mocked Donald Trump, and a lot of Trump supporters, including myself, still found it funny. Enter the Mr. Garrison-Trump era.
Yeah, I understand that.
And you should understand how my balls are going to taste when your country starts needing money.
This was not just Trump bad over and over again, it was a South Park story. Mr. Garrison was already insane before Trump ever came down the escalator. He was already offensive, he was already one of the most ridiculous people in town. So turning him into the Trump stand-in actually made sense. It was character-driven. Garrison would say the most insane thing imaginable, expecting people to reject him. And then they would cheer. He tried to lose the election, he told people he wasn't qualified, he basically warned that putting him in charge would be a disaster.
Unlike me, she's actually capable of running this country.
And somehow that only made his supporters like him more. It was funny because the joke was not really aimed squarely at Trump. It was about voters in general. It was about media panic. It was about the whole election turning into a circus nobody could control. And Hillary wasn't spared either. In the Garrison-Trump season, she wasn't treated like some heroic savior of democracy. She was still the turd sandwich, a robotic, overmanaged, and stuck repeating the same focus group line even while Garrison was basically begging voters not to elect him.
My opponent is a liar and he cannot be trusted.
South Park treated 2016 like a circus where nobody got to walk away looking clean. That's why the Garrison-Trump era worked. It still felt like South Park. But somewhere after that, the energy completely changed. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators, seemed tired of Trump. They had already spent years turning him into Mr. Garrison, and they pretty much admitted there was only so much more to say. So South Park sat out the 2024 election season, which was strange for a show that used to jump straight into the biggest political moments in America. And then came the billion-dollar Paramount era. After that, South Park came roaring back with Trump at the center of the show again. Only this time it did not feel like Mr. Garrison. It didn't feel like character comedy. It felt like the show skipped the election, waited out the chaos, signed the massive deal, and then returned with the safest anti-Trump jokes in Hollywood. Season 27 opens by dropping the viewer into a completely different kind of South Park. The episode imagines a Trump second term where wokeness has basically been outlawed, Christianity is being pushed through the country, and everyone in town is terrified of saying the wrong thing. Then the show cuts to its big shock image, Donald Trump in bed with Satan. From there, the episode leans into Epstein and jokes about Trump's body parts. And look, this is South Park. Nobody expects classy comedy, but the dirty jokes of the past usually had a bigger point behind them. This started to feel like the point was just look how gross Trump is. And there was only so many times you could tell that joke before it stops feeling edgy. The next episode goes after ICE. Mr. Mackey loses his job and ends up working in immigration enforcement. Kristi Noem becomes the dog joke. A character Clyde starts a right-wing podcast. The Trump administration is the target once again. The next episode brings in tech CEOs lining up to kiss the ring. And again, there can be funny moments inside that, but the pattern becomes hard to ignore. The audience seemed to feel it too. The season 27 premiere sits around a 9.3 on IMDb, but by episode 3 it drops to around a 7.4. That kind of fall off says something. The shock worked at first, then the joke started wearing thin, and at that point it doesn't feel dangerous or rebellious anymore. It starts to feel like late night TV with better animation and worse language. And this is where the shift becomes impossible to ignore. Stephen Colbert loved the new version of South Park.
If the government interfered with private AI, innovators at South Park wouldn't be able to make important videos like this one.
That should be a red flag by itself. South Park used to be the type of show that mocked people like Colbert. The smug Hollywood monologues, the moral lectures, the kind of comedy where the audience claps because they agree, not because they actually laugh. South Park was supposed to be the opposite of that. But when the newer Trump episodes aired, Colbert praised them. He treated South Park like it was delivering some brave anti-Trump message. And that is where longtime fans should stop and ask a simple question. When Stephen Colbert is applauding South Park, is South Park still the rebel in animated comedy, or did it become a part of the same club? Because that's what it feels like. Some critics even started comparing South Park to SNL. They meant that as a compliment. But for South Park, that should feel like an insult. SNL is safe political comedy for people who already agree with each other. It is the place where the audience claps because the joke confirms what they already believe. Parker and Stone would even go on Jimmy Kimmel Live to joke about Trump's anatomy.
We actually brought our deepfake AI rig to show you how we did Donald Trump's wiener in the show. Wonderful. So
very sophisticated technology.
At that point, it starts to feel less like South Park standing outside the late night machine and more like South Park joining the freaking panel. Then there's the corporate side of it. And this might be the most South Park part of the whole story. South Park spent years mocking Hollywood for selling out. They mocked Disney, they mocked China, they mocked studios that pretend to be brave while doing whatever protects the money. That's why Banned in China works so well. Hollywood really was bending over for Chinese dollars. Disney really did care more about access and profit than artistic courage. South Park called it out, and China banned the show. Honestly, that was a badge of honor. But now South Park is not operating from the outside anymore. It is now one of Paramount's biggest brands. First came the massive Viacom-CBS deal, hundreds of millions of dollars. Then came the billion-dollar Paramount streaming deal right before season 27 premiered. So this was not just one corporate payday, it was a pattern. South Park went from outlaw cartoon to corporate crown jewel, and the timing is what makes it harder to ignore. The same show that was about to mock Paramount, the media machine, and the Trump settlement was also entering a huge new deal with that same corporate machine. That is pure South Park irony. The only problem is old South Park would have made that contradiction the main joke. New South Park pointed at it, laughed for a second, and kept moving. That doesn't mean Parker and Stone are frauds, it doesn't mean they never make good comedy anymore, but it does make the anti-establishment image harder to buy. So here's my verdict. South Park did not become bad because it mocked Trump. That argument is too lazy. South Park became weaker because Trump became the entire joke. The old show made you wonder who was about to get hit next. The new show makes you feel like you already know. And once comedy becomes predictable, it stops being funny. That's how South Park went woke and forgot how to joke. Thank you for watching.